So here's a super simple app with one menu item. No style, no nothing. It's just an app with one menu. So do we all understand what type of plugin this home screen is? Simple menu, right? It's pretty simple. Simple menu. When I tap on the only choice in the list, what do we get? A URL. Right? So that's probably the custom URL or whatever. So I made this intentionally really, really brain dead simple. So if you didn't have this in front of you, and I don't be bashful, we need to know this so we can help you. If I sent you this config file in an email, would you be able to look at this and describe to me how this app was going to look and work just by looking at this config file, or would you be like, I have no idea?
To a degree.
Who would have no idea at all? Okay, 1, 2. Who would have kind of some idea? And who would be like, oh, totally, this is going to launch a menu as a home screen, it's going to have one choice on it, it's going to take you to a URL, which is going to be Google.
But I just learned that in the last year.
Could you figure that out?
Yeah, but I'm not advanced. It's just that I used to play around in Xcode a lot because I prefer playing around there.
Right.
Yeah.
It's okay to have no idea. So we're going to assume that we have no idea, and I'm going to show you how kind of.
But normally I have no idea, just to be clear.
Yeah. I'm going to start a new document.
Let's use the find,
which is blank. It's a blank document. And I'm going to paste some stuff in here, take some things out, and then we'll keep adding to it, just to make sure that you guys understand what this text file is all about. And the rest of you will probably get something out of it too, even though you say no. I don't totally believe you. So JSON data is not a JSON, JavaScript object notation. It can take on a ton of different forms, right? This is just an empty config file, by the way. JSON is not a proprietary technology, language, markup structure. It's just an industry-accepted kind of way to organize information. So we all know what a comma-separated file looks like, right? Where you have a header with the column names, first name, comma, last name, comma, address, comma, and then the next line doesn't have the column names anymore, it's got the data. David, book, address, phone. And then every row has the data. But every row has to be the same now, because that data was described on the top row. Right, so I think most of us know what a comma file looks like. I don't want to confuse everybody. There we go. So on a comma-separated file, the first line would be the description of each column, and then the second line would be the data. But my point is, we've all seen files like this, and so each person in the list would have different data, but every person in the list would have to have a first name, last name, address, and phone number, even if that data point was blank for some people. The element would still be here, right? So this is just a way to describe information. So you could send this to somebody and they could look at that and go, oh, I get it, it's a list of people, right? As a human, pretty human readable. Well, what happens when you have way too many columns, like 50 across, and they're not obvious, like first name, last name, address, phone. They're interesting pieces of data that don't have any meaning unless you have this header in front of you. Right? What if you're on page 55 and all you see, is just data, data? It becomes very, very difficult to deal with. So it's not very well described to a human or a computer, depending on where you are in the file. It's challenging. So JSON does a better job at that. JSON allows us to describe the data. Go back to our JSON style format right in front of us. So if I was going to describe a bunch of people to mirror our comma list, I could do something like this. People, and because it's going to be a bunch, they would be in brackets because I'm referring to the because as in that's what JSON requires us to do if we're going to have more than one thing in this list of people. So each thing would be like this, oops, mirroring our other one. So first would be David, last would be book, right? Phone would be whatever phone number, and that is now a person. And I can copy this person, and just like our other one, let's say we had 50 people, it's just a list of people. But if I had 500 pages of people, and you gave me this one person, I can see what this value is. It's the first name. We've described it with the data. So now it becomes much more human readable in some situations. So depending on what you're trying to represent, This can be really, really useful. Sometimes it's not the best approach. Sometimes it gets really complicated. You know, there's always different approaches for things. And so we found that our structured data in our apps that we call the BT config file, which that's just a name that we call the file. We have an item here. And then we could have another item, and another item, and another item, and another item, and another item. It's just a list of things. We just happen to have things that we describe as BuzzTouch apps in this items list. That's all. And our config files have one app. What if you had 50 apps in a config file? Why not? Nobody's done that yet, which surprises the heck out of me. I used to do that all the time. How about 50 car dealerships and one parent app? Right? You can describe, it's just a list of apps. Most of us haven't ever talked about that or explored it, but because it's JSON and because we have an array, see the square bracket? That ends all the way down here. That's the end of that one item, which is our app. So you can have app, comma, app, comma, app, comma. Right? Couple that with like a back-end technology that's creating this data for you dynamically. I mean, it's endless what you could do with this. But I'm just demonstrating this is not a proprietary thing. It's just data. So in our items list, we have an app. And it has properties like its ID and all these things we're used to. It has a list of themes. It has a list of tabs. It has a list of menus. It has a list of screens. And then it ends. Right? So that is how we describe what an app looks like. So
And your control
that's
panel
the short
your control
version
panel
for,
feeds all
just
that.
know that this is not secret. It just looks cryptic to you because you don't necessarily understand it when you pull it all apart.
Every time you add something in the control panel, you're adding something to that JSON.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
It's the only thing that really the control panel controls.
All it does.
Exactly.
Right.
It has nothing to do
Exactly.
with anything
Yeah, yeah.
other than this file.
Yeah.
People don't realize that.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
When you've got an app and it
Uh-huh.
connects to the server, the back-end BuzzTouch server,
Uh-huh.
there's a bit in there which obviously says this is the latest version of the file.
Perfect.
Now, does it download, because I don't know, does it download the whole file or is
Whole
it
file.
just... Now, is
It's a
there
new
a...
version of it.
Yeah, but to check, does it download the whole file or is it just a header?
To check, it checks one little, good question.
Yeah.
This report to cloud URL, let's copy this for this app, and let's see what it checks. Because this is where it checks. If we had super legit documentation, it would say, what does a report to cloud URL does? Well, if you provide a URL, that's where it's going to go to see if it needs to be updated. The whole purpose of this is to go get the last time it was modified. Watch this. I'm just copying this URL. If we copy this URL, which is what the app is going to use to go report to cloud, right? We paste it in a browser. That's what we get. So if that report to cloud URL returns something different next time you ask for it, it'll assume that something's changed and I need to go get the new version.
So that leads me on to
That's
the
all
second
it is.
question,
Yeah.
which is, does it then download the entire new
The whole
config-
thing.
Is there any way of just doing the changes to speed up the process? Would that be feasible?
It's super fast anyway.
11:39,
Yeah.
we said, of course, do whatever you want.
It's
Right.
super fast
That's
anyway.
enough.
I don't think it was.
But
The
yeah,
question is, what would be the easiest
Well, I'm
way to
trying to-
make it do that differently?
No, what I'm trying to do is
I'm
get
being
rid of
serious
the
when I say just
Yeah.
get your head around it. Of course. Just how, not if. It's never if. It's how, and how easy, how hard, what will it take. No, so you're exactly right. And in the earlier days, we didn't download the whole file. And I didn't mean to, minimize your question. I just want to make sure and keep reminding us that, yeah, it's just an app. Do whatever we want. The way it's currently set up is it's going to re-download the whole file.
Right.
For a lot of kind of just standardized, just easier that way. And so for all of us to understand, like, what version of the file are you using? On a screen-by-screen basis, I can absolutely imagine, like on our menu list plugin, so you know what, don't read the menu items from the config file. Go to this URL. See when the last time they were changed was. If they're new, go get just those.
That makes sense because it's Miguel's question
Exactly.
earlier about, because
Totally.
I've got quite a big sort of file to download.
That's how I
each
would do it
time.
if I were you. I would lazy load every screen. That's how I would do it myself. And you're going to have to do some hacking around and
Yeah.
kind of some discovery to figure out the best way to do that. Because there's a lot of approaches
I
that
mean,
you could take.
the last question,
Yeah.
is obviously, is it compressed when it's downloaded? Is it
No.
gzipped?
No.
Is there any reason for that?
It is gzip, but it's not, the white space isn't all removed,
Right.
right? If you look at it, it's human readable.
Okay. Cool.
It's not like freaked out to make it, because it doesn't really save that much space in most cases. So a little bit back to the point we were trying to make. So all you're doing when you play with the control panel is you're changing the way that this config data works. Another way to say that is, why do you use the control panel?
Yeah, because once you've got the source
What the
code
hell?
downloaded,
Just
you can just
type
put
it.
it in a Dropbox file, can't you?
Just type it. I mean, it's a legitimate question. Why do you use the control panel? Well, the answer is not everybody does.
That's what the
Lots
JSON
of
is
people
about.
don't use the control panel because it takes too long. People like me do not want to click around 50 buttons to change the tab bar background color. Right? So it just depends on your approach. If you want to hand type this and keep it in your Dropbox, go ahead. There's nothing wrong with that. Now, of course, in doing that, you're also saying, I might make errors and I might break it, right? I might not know what I'm changing, right? Of course, there's reasons that the control panel exists other than not knowing how. I mean, it helps you minimize typos. It helps you keep it all structured real nice. There's a lot of things. But you don't have to use it. Because again, it's open source, right? So in this app, because there's only one screen, the first screen in the list, because there's no tabs, I'm backing up, because there are no tabs defined, the first screen in our list becomes the home screen. So that's the menu. Because it's the first screen in the list. There's no magic to that. It's just your project. If you looked at the iOS Objective-C part, you'd see where David wrote, hey, find the first screen in the list because there's no tabs and make it the home screen. That's kind of how that works. So this is the menu. The child items in the menu become each row. So we could type another child item in the menu, for example, like that, or like that. They all do the same thing. They need commas after them because there's multiple. But we could put multiple items in our list. They would all do the same thing.
So David,
Yeah.
would it be fair to say that if you learn how to manipulate JSON data, it's like kind of a shortcut to
Oh yeah.
coding?
You can make an app in 5 minutes. Literally, paste it from a different app, change 6 things, sell it to your customer.
David.
Done. Absolutely, it's beneficial if you can get your head around it.
For my app, for my
5 minutes might be a stretch, but it's much faster to duplicate things.
No.
You're next.
Look, for my Castles app,
Yeah.
I want to do it in English.
Yeah.
And so I just have the Portuguese version, and then I just duplicated the config file. And
Perfect.
so everything that says História, translated to a picture, you know, when it says fotografias, translated to photos, you know.
Yeah.
It's just,
What Miguel does,
in 2 seconds I've got an English app, you
he
know.
includes 3 or 4 config files in his same project.
Exactly.
And then he lets the customer
And like,
choose which one to
it
use.
has
This is
like-
English, Spanish, German, Portuguese, same thing. It's awesome.
Even I did it in pages once. I copied and pasted it in
You're
pages.
lazy loading.
And some of the
Formatting.
yeah, went wrong.
What's up with that?
Yeah.
You notice what I'm using here is just a plain old text editor.
Okay.
Pages,
That's great.
and Microsoft Word, and those are applications to help you build presentations. So they've decided for you,
Yeah.
hey, she doesn't care about all the hidden characters behind the scenes. We're going to, right, it's not a text editor. So understanding what a text editor does versus understanding what a word processor does or what PowerPoint does, right? Those programs are really good at helping you format pretty things, but they also are really good at introducing characters that you didn't necessarily want or need or see or understand. And so I type in text editor. I write everything in text editor. I just hack it out because I don't want anybody changing what I type. I want it literally, you know, if I put a quote, I want a quote. I don't want the piece of software saying, no, you didn't mean that. It's like, oh, I did mean that, right? I don't want this software to help me. So there's a different kind of approach there. But anyway, back to our thing. So I recompiled the app and I launched it, and now we have a bunch of menus or items because I just pasted them in here, right? And then the last item in our list is a custom URL screen, and it doesn't show until we choose it, right? And so we have this item ID attached to one of these menu items, load screen with item ID. So fundamentally all that's happening is when you tap this row, and you can look at the plugin code to see this logic. You tap the row, it says, hey, go find the screen with the item ID that equals this, and it looks at the config data that's already loaded in memory because we loaded it at the beginning, because it's kind of slow to read it one at a time, and load that thing.
Yeah, but if you're creating those,
That's all. That's how that works.
but if you're creating those item IDs on the config file, what's the item ID?
It's a random number.
Yeah,
In theory, they
like
should,
that.
in theory, they should all be unique.
No, unique I understand. Of course.
Clearly, though, I just pasted this one and this one
So
and this one. They all share the
Sometimes
same
just change
item
the
ID.
letter.
So
Just change the letter on that.
Or a couple of letters randomly.
I have to
Sausages,
know.
1, 2.
This is your code. That's
Sausages and swear words.
It's good programming practice to not duplicate IDs in anything,
And then, yeah.
right? There are other reasons why you wouldn't want to have multiple. Everything in your config file has an item ID and an item type. So technically, if you have an item type of a menu and an item type of a screen or an item type of a tab, and they have the same ID, it wouldn't hurt anything. Right? But it's just easier to say, make them all unique. Because nothing should have the same ID of something else.
How different are the plugins from the other plugins from the config file? Like they're all written in JSON as well, aren't they? Or not?
No,
they're not.
No, we'll get to that, which is back to your question. She said, and we're going to wrap this up, and then I'll come back to what I was going to show you, like how to make a plugin or whatever. And I think we'll just
Are we doing
delay
that in the next session?
I was going to do that in like 5 minutes.
brilliant.
That was 20 minutes ago.
Don't worry about lunch.
No, let's do this really quick.
It's fine.
So let's say we wanted to make a plugin. I call this My Fun View, right? So let's make a plugin called My Fun Plugin. My Fun View, whatever. So what do we need for a plugin in Objective-C? There's only 2 required files, .h and .m. That's it. So we need 2 files. So I'm going to take these files, and I'm going to show, this is just how I do it. There's a lot of ways to do it. I'm going to show these in Finder. Right, here they are. I'm going to copy them. I'm going to paste them into their own little folder here called My Fun, we'll say My Fun Plugin. I'm going to get rid of this thing just for now to make it easier. I don't want to confuse everybody. Okay, so I have a folder that I made. I'm going to paste in it those files that I copied from the other folder. Right? I'm going to change the name of the class, the name of the file itself to My Fun Plugin. Remember, this is just one way to do it. This is just how I do it, because it's so much faster than using Xcode's new file, blah, blah, blah. My Fun Plugin. Now, these files have different names now. I just changed the names of them. But the contents of them are the same as I copied a minute ago.
Exactly.
Right? So clearly, what did I copy? I copied the menu.
Yeah.
It's got all kinds of stuff in there to make a menu. I don't want to make a menu. We'll make something else. We'll get all that menu crap out of it. We just have the generic blank class file. I'm going to open these up, and you won't be able to do this unless you practice it a few times, and I'll show you just because we're right out of time. It's going to be super fast. So I'm going to get rid of the class file name, and I'm going to call it Fun Plugin. I'm going to get rid of everything in here that I'm not going to use. I'm not intentionally not teaching you what I'm doing, I'm getting rid of everything. So this is the like minimum required .h file, right, for Objective-C. This is like a valid header file. We'll get rid of that. Get rid of that. And didn't I also open up, yeah, here it is. So My Fun Plugin is the name of this class file. My Fun Plugin. You may notice here that I'm just getting rid of, I'm replacing the name of the menu, right? No table, blah, blah, blah. Cutting out some stuff. I could have done this a bunch of different ways, but I'm literally showing you how David does it because that's just how I do it. I just copy 2 files, get rid of everything I don't need, and the problem is a lot of you guys won't know what you don't need. And I totally understand that, right? It's like, what do I know what I don't need?
What do I import? You know?
Right, it's not that easy. I totally understand. I'm just showing you how I do it, because I do know what I don't need.
It'd be good if there was like a basic
There's a
document.
blank plugin in your plugin blank.
Yeah.
For exactly that reason. Copy it, change the name of it, and you're good, because there's nothing in it.
Why did you do
That's
that?
the reason it exists. And I did that for my sake. right? All of this stuff comes from things that, you know, I learn things like I'm saving time, and therefore you can save time or whatever. Okay, so anyway, I may have already broke this, I don't know. But the point is, I made the two files, and then I drag them into my project, just like dragging in any other plugin in your project. Where did I hide it? Here it is. So I'm going to drag this folder into my plugins folder. I would make a new screen. So I'm going to, once again, I'm copying an existing screen. So I just copy a lot. It's just way easier than typing. I'm going to paste this in here. I'm going to give this screen a random ID. The item type links to the type of plugin you want to load. So this loads a BT Screen custom URL class, but we want it to load a My Fun plugin, right? So we need a different item type. My Fun plugin. Nickname, junk, navbar, hi there. Now our Fun plugin, does it have any use for the data URL? We cut all the code out of there, so it doesn't know what a data URL is even for or what its purpose is, but it's not going to hurt to leave it there, so let's just leave it there. And just in this example, you can have additional random arbitrary values in JSON if they're unused, that's fine. That's fine. You can have, we're going to expand on that. Okay, so now we have our menu. So let's get rid of, all these menu items just so the screen doesn't just ugly with all of them the same thing. So let's get rid of these. And instead of the second one saying my favorite website, we'll say my cool plugin. This is the row title on the menu.
Yeah.
And instead of load screen with item ID pointing to the URL, we're going to point to this random ID. Right? And it's going to load.
Nothing.
No, it'll load our plugin.
No, yeah.
Yeah, but plugins.
Nothing.
No, the plugin's nothing. Yeah, exactly. That's what I meant.
No, that's okay. And that takes us up to what we were talking about earlier, like the UI. Do we use interface builder? Do we write code? That kind of takes us to the next question or whatever. So when we load this, here's our plugin. So you said, and this is where programmers get like super deliberate and literal, you said it's blank. This thing's far from blank.
I
Really?
know, yeah.
It's got a background view and a color and an image that happens to be not there. Has a button, has a title. There's tons of work done for you already.
Yeah.
It's not
It's
blank.
a real cool plugin, man.
I mean, our comparison though, as a plugin, it's blank and generic and lame. But if you've made iOS apps before, you're like, holy crap, I can make
That was
these
30 minutes
screens
work.
super fast.
Somebody
And
asked
all
me
I
what
gotta
the
do is
favorite
add a
plugin
couple
was, and it's the
things.
blank plugin.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe now we can add our map or our button or our picture, whatever I have in mind, because I'm making something custom. But the point is, this foundation with the nav bar and the background and all that stuff is already there because we copied an existing plugin. So this is the last technical question before we break, and I'm going to quiz Kitsy here because I'm not picking on anybody. How does this, like, in as literal terms as you can describe, why does this screen have a nav bar and a title and a back button?
Because it's all linked into that little message there, linked into the app delegate, the screen data.
This here?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll ask it a different way. A UI view controller is a built-in Objective-C thing. Does it have a title and a nav bar and a back button?
No, it's got to be programmed in. It's got to be the BC view.
So where did we program that in?
BT view.
BC view utilities. And then that'll go to someone else. It'll go to someone else.
I'll answer it differently. See this right here?
Yeah.
You said the same thing, yeah.
Yeah.
The technical term for this, and this is the lesson before we take a break, is every class file, which is Objective-C, not JSON, every class file in your project, whether it be in an iOS project or an Android Java class files, extend something. Extend something, and there's a whole lesson on what extending means, but every plugin extends the BuzzTouch view controller. Instead of extending the standard UI view controller.
Because this is what I was going to be talking about later. When people are taking tutorials, they leave the UI view controller.
Bingo, they don't know the relationship, what extending means. So if we instead extended a generic UI view controller when we made our plugin, watch the errors we get. When I compile this, well, I'm not even going to compile. Look, there's errors now. Because the standard UI view controller doesn't have any idea what screen data is. Just, that's all BuzzTouch stuff. So because we extended the BuzzTouch view controller, we saved a ton of time. That's the whole point. That's what draws the nav bar. That's what adds the background. That's what adds the audio if it all exists in the JSON, right? That little magic right there. That extending that view controller is like the secret. There's no secret. If you're a programmer, you look at this and go, oh, I see what they've done. This is awesome. Every screen's based on this parent screen that has all these built-in methods that I can take advantage of. That's not secret. It just so happens that most of our audience doesn't get that because they're not experienced developers.
You give away Kitsy's secret though. No.
Right, so that's why when I go to a this is an important concept because when I go to a conference with a bunch of ninja developers and they go, oh, I use BuzzTouch Ball, that thing's cool. They don't speak in terms of like, whoa, that thing's awesome, that's life-changing. It's just a project. And to other iOS developers, it's just a cool project. So I'm not trying to minimize how awesome and cool and flexible it is. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to like claim that we shouldn't exist.
What's cool is that you put it out to all of us, David. What's cool is that you gave it to us.
What's cool about it is thousands of people use this approach, so
that
now
we don't have to know all the
benefit from that. That's what's powerful about it. It's not like, you know, holy cow, you should see this thing. It isn't about that. It's only that way because you don't know how it works. But once you begin to learn how it works, well then what's awesome about it begins to change. It's not the awesome project, it becomes the awesome community, the awesome way to make apps super fast, the awesome way to make a couple $100 by making a screen and sharing it with your friends. Right, what becomes awesome about it shifts. So that's very intentional.
It just
very intentional. This has never been meant to be like our thing and I'm gonna copyright, right? People ask me, you need to protect that. I'm like, protect what? It's code. It's just a good way to make an app. There's nothing secret about it. So then that's the reason why. Because we just extend a view controller that you can look at. It's in your project. And again, if we were all the other companies, you would have this view controller that we've extended here. You would have that in an SDK packaged up that you couldn't see.
Yeah.
Right.
That's the difference between us and everybody else. Go ahead and just go.
I think it was almost a year ago when somebody was saying, oh, they can't get it to work, they pass code onto another developer.
Right.
And your line said, if they don't know how a view controller works, then I wouldn't pay them a dime.
Right.
And that's when you said that, I thought, what's a view controller?
So
And that's what starts the path.